call this information session to order. I would like to do a roll call that the record could show that Supervisors of ABB, Cindy Fisher, Ron Flair, Tom Gasiola, and Frank Adizio are in attendance. Meeting guidelines, please, if I could go over this. The Board of Supervisors has called this meeting to discuss the township contract to acquire the 87-acre ABB property on Muse Bishop Road. It is the Board's intention to convey the facts and contributing factors around the purchase, cleanup, and future use of the property by Cecil Township. Following opening presentation by Cecil Township Engineer, Mr. Dan Dizeroff, PE. Mr. Dan Dizeroff and American Genosciences Inc. President David Perry, PG, will then be available to answer questions as they pertain to the due diligence work completed to date related to the purchase of property. The Board will ask that you refrain from making any political statements, personal attacks, or off-topic comments that would otherwise detract from the intention of this meeting. Questions regarding the agreement will not be addressed this evening. We will not be in a position to answer questions about breach of contract, damages, surcharge, grants, and any issues surrounding the agreement. In the event this Board deems a question or a series of questions have been answered, and in light of maximizing the time available for questions, we will thank you for your question and move on. Now, at this time, let's have the opening presentation by Dan Dizeroff.
Can everybody hear me? How about this one? Okay, great, even better. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Dizeroff. I'm the Township Engineer for Cecil Township, and my role in the Township, for those of you who don't know me, is to complete projects for the Township related to infrastructure, such as things as roads and bridges, and we deal with stormwater and sewers and those types of things. In certain cases, sometimes there comes along where townships decide to do other things, like build buildings and do those types of things. So the township engineer's role is to be involved in those things and use their knowledge and ability on projects to help things to be developed, is the best way to put it. So with respect to tonight, I've been involved in this ABB property. I'm familiar with the village of Muse. I put sewers in there over 30 years ago in the village, and I've worked in and around Cecil Township for over 30 years. So I'm very familiar with the site that we're here to talk about tonight. So we put a very brief presentation together to hopefully give some information as to the history of the site and what the current status is with respect to what the township has done with the property. So to start it off, again, as Eric the chairman has stated, we really just want to present what information has been collected and to answer questions. There'll be no official action taken at this meeting tonight. The township's next official meeting is on May 6th, Monday, May 6th. Okay, so let's start it off, the property in question. This here, what you see before you, is the site location map for the particular property. It's an 87-acre tract. This is north. You can see north going up here. This is the town of Muse right here. This is Muse Bishop Road. This is headed back down towards Route 50. And this is Chaffoni Road. And this is O'Hara Road, which is headed over towards Route 980. The property is bounded by properties in Muse. It's also bounded to the east by the Koski property, to the north by the Yago property. And for reference to the Muse School is located right here off of School Street. It's approximately 1,500 feet from the Muse School to the property line. And the property does contain an old coal waste pile. And that old coal waste pile is located mostly on this half of the property. And it's approximately 2,500 feet from the center of the coal waste pile to the school, just for reference. So a little bit of history on the property. as people probably know, the town of Muse was developed as a mining town. It was a U.S. Steel mining town where the miners actually lived. It was a little planned community. It had its own sewage treatment plant, and it was really ahead of its time when it was built. And associated with that was the mine that was operated by the Henry Clay Frick Company back in 1923 when it was started. So the mine ran its course till about 1953 when the mining operation ceased, and then there was a company that came in there that actually purchased it that did work with chemicals and solvents. As I understand it, they did chemical recovery and recycling of materials on the site. And that operation lasted for about 15 years, and then it was sold to another company in 1968 called Combustion Engineering, or CE Cast, and they also did the chemical recovery operations. And then somewhere around 1973, they ended the chemical recovery operations, but they still were doing manufacturing on the site, making additives for the casting industry. Moving on from there up until about 1980, at point in 1980, that then what we call the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Resources, now known as the DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, issued a consent decree on the property to clean up some of the environmental issues. There were some dump areas up there that were associated with coal, and there were some things that needed cleaned and taken away from the waterways. So a consent decree was something that the owners of the property at that time agreed to, and there was some environmental cleanup that took place, and there was a landfill that was created up there, and there was approximately 46,000 tons of soil that was contained within the landfill. Then in 1985, the property was leased to Cast America. For a short period of time, they were there, and then in 1987, there was another operator that came there, and then in 1993, pretty much everything ceased to operate on there as a viable operation, any activity, day-to-day activity, and the buildings were demolished. In 1993, there was some site investigations done by the property owner, ABB, and they did some analysis up there to see what was there in terms of environmental issues. And then in 1994, there were some site closure activities that took place to close out the site. There was a mine shaft that was closed and abandoned, and that was in 1994. In 1995, there was a big soil remediation program that went on, and this is a point in time where they approximately 20,000 cubic yards of material were excavated from the site, and then there were areas that contained 55-gallon drums that were unearthed. And what happened, they took those drums everywhere that they could find them through a geophysical survey, which was like a ground-penetrating radar, where they are able to see underneath the ground. And they found these areas where the drums were, and they actually took them all out of there, and the soil was excavated, and the drums were disposed off-site. And then they actually treated the soil with heat to get some of the other items that were in the soils out of it. So that was completed, and then the soils were backfilled. So at that point in time, that's pretty much the largest amount of remediation that was done to the site, and there was nothing in the way of a complete environmental closure that was determined at that time. ABB really didn't do anything else, nor were they required to do anything else by the DEP except to monitor the groundwater, which has occurred every year since 1996. So it's really just sat up there in its current state with nothing going on. And then in 2015, the township started to look around for properties for potential public works facilities. And this site was thought to be desirable from a location standpoint, being centrally located in the township. So there was some authorization to start doing a little bit of due diligence to look into the site, and part of it was to think about it as a potential site for a future public works building, and then at the same time there was work being done to expand the new school, so there was a thought that there could be a secondary access to the school that could actually, a second way out as opposed to just its access through School Street. So as things went along, there was more due diligence looked at. There was information that was available from ABB. They had an environmental consultant that was there looking at the property for a long period of time and understood it very well. And the township started to do a little more due diligence on the property. And then finally in June of 2016, they met with ABB officials. They were able to get a meeting with them to discuss the sale of the property. And after that, there was the discussion with ABB officials was what was the DEP going to require to officially clean up this site. So jointly, the township met with DEP along with ABB and the DEP in September of 2016 to discuss the potential sale of the land to the township from ABB. And then after that, the attorneys on both sides started thinking about what a sales agreement would look like. It ended up that there was another meeting that was held with the DEP and some people from ABB to discuss what's called as an Act 2 certification on the property. The Act 2 certification is basically an environmental clearance that's provided by the DEP such that if the site meets certain standards, it can be used, there can be a future use on the project, and in this case, the idea was to develop it as was discussed to potentially put anything non-residential on the project. It could be commercial or whatever, but that was the discussion with the DEP. So there was a discussion with them as to what they would require in terms of testing to further characterize the site and see how it needed to be meet their standards to be released for development. And along with that release, the Act 2 actually releases whoever owns the property from future liability related to environmental issues that could occur on the property.